Welcome to episode 252 of The Center Ring, aka TCR, aka your favorite esports podcast. And yes, this is going to be the best episode ever. Might be the wildest episode that we have ever done. I can promise you that. This has been pre-recorded, like we mentioned last episode. This is while Anuj just had his child. So I was left solo. I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? And then my boy Nate from Alt was like, I got a crazy idea. And that involved bringing not only Nate from Alt on, we have esports caster extraordinaire DoA joining us, and professional skateboarder Josh Callis comes onto the center ring to reveal the collab between himself, DC Shoes, and Alt. No spoilers. Don't want to give too much away. You'll have to listen to the episode. But I hope you enjoy. Like I said, it is a crazy episode. No other esports podcast is brave enough to be as ambitious as TCR. And that's all I got to say. So enjoy the show. Before we get into any of that, though, got to tell you about the show's sponsor, which is kind of awkward with him being here. Alt. The Center Ring is brought to you by Alt. You know them. We talk about them. We're all literally wearing their shirts right now. I have a buddy shirt on, which you can go and get. AltEsports.com. That's what it does. It makes you, look, you buy, this is how it works, people. You go in.
Tim, that's just because you're my buddy.
That's exactly, yes. So I'm not going to lie. Nate didn't want me to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up. I met him back in 2015 at the MLG Major in Columbus. Afterwards, he designed this shirt, and he said he thought about me the whole time designing the shirt that says buddies on it. I was like, hey, I appreciate it. I like that. So go to altesports.com, get yourself a buddy shirt, get yourself an esports consultant shirt designed by DoA himself. You can get a Center Ring 101 Burglars hoodie.
Hard work, obviously.
And that's funny, actually, because Eric, we made that shirt for you.
Yeah.
So tell them the backstory, man, because Josh, basically, there's all these weird people in our industry who call themselves consultants, like esports consultants, and we're like, man, we just gotta make a shirt for those people to just wear it so people know.
Yeah, well, it's like esports. You know, we worked so many years trying to gain relevance because we thought it was awesome, and then it does, and everyone's trying to now sell esports to all these big companies, and they don't know anything about gaming. They don't come from it, and they don't know the community, and they're calling themselves esports consultant, which is kind of a silly title to begin with. So we just
we get that too. Yeah, we get that too.
Has there been
everyone can be one.
Skateboarding consultants, right? There must have been.
Yeah, I mean, I even was a consultant for a little while when I went out to California. I was bridging the gap between the corporate side and then the street side. So, you know, sometimes the language is different between the two, and I have a pretty good understanding of both. So I was able to be a consultant,
a legitimate consultant, though.
Yeah,
there you go.
I feel like that's kind of the part I was super curious about, because my exposure to you, Josh, was always through videos, right? Just watching skate videos, or reading through magazines, skate magazines. But your reality was you were getting pulled into that, hey, be the bridge between corporate and the culture, right?
Yeah.
And early formative years of skateboarding, what was that like for you? You were super passionate about what you loved, skating, and then people wanted to okay, this guy, we can hire him as a consultant. He can teach us what's up. What was that like early days?
Well, in the early days, I was not a consultant. In the early days, it was skate only, but it was in the later days when, you know, a lot more money was coming into the picture, and it was just how do the skaters talk to these people that are now running these companies, you know, and it was easy for me to do it. But that didn't last very long either, because it's kind of hard to do. It's kind of hard to deal with. It's just hard to deal with people sometimes on that level, you know. How do you explain to the money guy that, you know, this dude is a hard-working, looks cool dude, and then how do you explain to the younger dude, like, hey, this guy that's talking to you right now really has no idea what he's talking about, but here's how you can set it up, and it just, yeah, I got out of it pretty quick.
I mean, that's like, so much of the last, like, since we founded the brand like 4 or 5 years back, it's like the same thing. Like, people don't like, what is professional organized gaming? Is that even a thing? And like, I mean, DoA, how long you been casting the scene? I saw you first. You were in Korea.
Yeah, this is 10 years for me now. 6 of it initially in South Korea, and then back in the US to help consult actually and commentate for the Overwatch League to build that. But yeah, 10 years in the scene, and it's a lot of what you're saying, Josh, like sounds very familiar to me, because when we were doing a lot of basically we're just doing our thing, like casting tournaments in the lobby of a Best Western hotel and stuff like that, and we were very passionate about it and we loved it. But then the corporate interest came in, and it was oh, the kids like the esports, we want to become part of that. And so then it's, how do you communicate what is great to you about it in a way that they can understand, where they don't come from that background at all. They just know that it's popular, they know that they want to be involved, but they don't really know how. And so then sometimes you run into that friction where they have ideas about what they want to do in the space, but that won't jive with the community. But sometimes there's some stubbornness to sort of accept that and respect the sort of knowledge that maybe a younger person from the community has, that the older, very experienced corporate person is resistant to listen to. So yeah, I feel like there's probably a lot of similar frictions, but slowly but surely we're making it. And I feel like when I was skateboarding, it seemed like, to me anyway, in the early 2000s to late 2000s is like when skateboarding became much more accepted as like mainstream. I feel like I've always said like it was like the day Tony Hawk landed the 900 is when people stopped being like, oh, skateboarders are just like the bad kids in movies, and now they're actually like legitimate cool athletes and stuff. But it was a long process, obviously. But I do see some similarities there.
Josh's kind of take on just seeing how prevalent like video game culture and like organized pro gaming is over the last couple of years. Like, what does it look like when you kind of see that happening in the culture? And I mean, here you are in like an esports podcast with a bunch of professional gamer dudes, right? Like, I mean, just that kind of aspect. Like, I think we all had like grassroots, really like super core passionate stuff that like got us here. And there's a lot of corporate interests across the field, but what is it like when you look out and you're like, whoa, like gaming is kind of becoming just a more dominant thing, like people are doing more of all the time? What is that like?
Well, I think, to be honest, I feel like it pushes certain cultures through space faster, if that makes any sense. Like, people learn how to like do things better or even more efficient in real life from gaming, because they, there is no limit in the game. I mean, kind of, you know what I mean? Whether it's a skate game or it could be any game really, but you're just doing stuff that you normally couldn't do in real life, and you could do it perfect. And so when you do enter back into like real life, you have a vision of how it worked, you know what I mean? Or things that you've done in the game that maybe you possibly wouldn't think that you could do outside of the game, and you can put those pieces together, and it just works. It's kind of like I don't know how to explain it really. It's just, you get the visual, you actually execute it, and you do it in the game. And I think that translates into people's real life world. Maybe not specifically, what you did in the game, but just the fact that you were able to like conquer it and navigate through this digital world, and now you enter the real world, and you kind of have like the tools to do stuff. You know what I mean? I think it's like a learning experience inside the games that translates into real life.
I feel like it like games are one of the few places where kind of two things happen like that, like where you have this huge imagination. Like you can just have like this endless imagination about what's possible. And then the crazy thing is there's this like high concentration of other individuals, like all these friends I've made in that, you know, playing games together or meeting them in the industry. And they're similar, where they have these big imaginations and they're kind of unafraid to just try crazy things in real life, you know. And like for us, it's just like, oh, we're gonna create companies and just go after it, you know. We're just gonna like organize, you know, with each other, and like, you know, the next thing you know, it's like you have all these crazy opportunities. That's like how I met DoA, was just, you know, he's in the Overwatch league, and I was like, oh, I want to be in this like pro gaming league. Like how can I be a part of the very first like world, like globally franchised esports league? And so you meet these other radical thinkers who are like super interested and curious. And I think that comment about like gaming kind of conditioned us as young people to be like, anything is possible. And then you meet other people who think like that, and then suddenly like you're all just kind of out there doing it, you know. Like
Yeah.
I love that about it.
I think that one of the things that always struck me as similar between skateboarding and video games is that there's a very rapid, iterative problem solving process that is involved in both, where if you're trying to like complete something that's very difficult in the video game, it's a lot of trying and learning something each time to help you eventually do it. And like I never was a super great skateboarder. It took me like almost 3 years to be able to learn a kickflip, but over that time it was tons and tons of iterative stuff where I would like a day of trying, and I would go home and I would like watch videos and think about it and like, how do I need to move my foot differently and all that. But you know, then there's other stuff where it's like, well, whenever you're skating too, right? And Josh, I'm sure you can speak to this way better than me, but like, you know, when you're trying to land something that you haven't landed before, there's a lot of, you might not be really conscious of it at the time, but there's a lot of iterative thinking where it's like, all right, this time I need to move my foot like slightly this way and try it that way. And it's like, okay, now I need to do this, you know?
No, you're 100% on. Like, yeah, 100%. Because you sit there in the game and you're trying to conquer whatever it is that you're doing. And it's the same with skate. You just sit there, and it's a problem for me in a way, because let's say I go try to race around a racetrack in real life in a car. Well, I get so focused on one turn, and I want to get that one turn so perfect that sometimes I forget about the other stuff. Just like in the game, you're like focusing in on that one thing you're trying to get, or in that one trick, that kickflip you're trying to make for 3 years. It's like, and then the other thing too is I'm sure the culture is the same with meeting other people, you know, like if you travel around and then you've met gamers online, and then, you know, like, hey, who's from, you know, Fort Worth, Texas? Like, oh, I am. And I'm like, oh, I played with you before. Like, let's meet up. And then, you know, I'm sure that, you know, you're meeting more people around, just like skateboarding. A skateboarder can meet all types of new people. Like, we don't have problems, you know, going to a different city or country even and chopping it up with new people and making new friends. And I feel like the gaming culture is the same way, you know?
Yeah,
both skateboarding and video games are universal languages.
That's how I met both of these guys.
Yeah.
Like Tim.
It's funny how it's like esports is like everyone talks about how esports is this huge industry, right? But yet everyone knows everyone.
Pretty much.
It's like the smallest huge industry out there. It's just funny how it's like you talk to one person and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I know Nate. You know Nate?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know Nate. How do you know that?" And it's just a one giant melting pot of friendships.
Well, let me give a little backstory on. So we've done ULT has done 2 DC collabs in the past, but we never did a skate shoe. Like we did a slide. So Josh, you might get a kick out of this. So there was like some footwear brands that were trying to do stuff in gaming that were all like technical wear. Like technically it will make you a better gamer. And I was just like, that's ridiculous. It doesn't exist. Like you're either good or you're not. So I made like house shoes. So I did my own like villain house shoes. Sick. And then I did some slides, some like Bolsa slides, because it was just a statement as an artist. I was like, this, you know, you don't got to wear anything to play video games. You wear whatever you want, right? It's not technical. And then they were like, whoa, the DC people were like, well, gamers are kind of like black sheep. Skaters are kind of like black sheep. Like, I think we get it. And I was like, yeah, but I also do love skateboarding, like legitimately. So I was pushing them to let me make a riff on one of the skate shoes. And they were like, oh man, the Kalis Volk's gonna come out. You gotta try this shoe. I think you're gonna love this shoe. So they gave me a pair to just wear and like try it out. It was like legit the most comfortable DC shoe I'd ever had, and performed really well. Like just skating around was like a really great shoe. So they're like, all right, cool. You want to do something with that? So I was like, yeah, man. And this was like, it tripped me out because you came by our studio and they're like, yo, that's Josh over there. You want to say what's up? He's real chill. I was like, nah, man, no. Like, that's cool. Like, just let him do his thing. Just let him do his thing. He's doing his thing. Just let him do it. And then they gifted me, like, you signed something sick, you skating over this bridge. And I still got it, man. I still got it in my art room. But so, yeah, like getting to build off of a shoe that you've been developing. I mean, this is like, you've done multiple skate shoes, and like, this is kind of where, like, this is the sickest shoe that you've built. Like, I love your kind of take on the evolution of designing skate shoes, because you've had your name on a handful of different pairs over the years. And just like, what was it like for you to design your very first one? What was that like for you?
It was pretty surreal, I had no idea what I was doing. So I just knew what I wanted it to look like, and so the guys at DC that actually design it would take my input, and then they would put it on paper, and then they would send it back, and then I would make, like whatever little design changes I thought were good, and they would tell me like, that makes the shoe too expensive, or they'd be like, oh, that's actually pretty good, and we would just go back and forth, and then just changing the colorways, and then you got to wait like 8 months for the samples, and then the samples get there, and I mean it's very surreal, but it's most surreal when you actually get the phone call and they say, hey, we want to give you a signature shoe, and then there's all the designing and stuff, which is cool, but when you don't really know what you're doing, it's not as surreal as when the actual shoe shows up, and then you just like, you get to look at it and put it on your foot and go down to the skate, spot, and that's the most surreal part, or seeing seeing other people wearing it is the, even still to this day, like 25 years later, 20 years later, however long it's been. I was just at the park today because it's, for the Go Skate Day bit, and there was kids wearing Kayla shoes, and I was just like, man, that's so cool,
Yeah, that's sick, man.
Yeah.
And then evolving that to like, you've done now, this is like this is your most current shoe out right now. Like, what do you love about it? I mean, you've learned a ton now about like how shoes get made. I mean, just the similar process of like, I know how to design a lot of stuff, but not shoes or footwear. So just learning about it was like, there's an incredible amount of design that goes into it, but like evolving to the model that's out now, like what have you learned, and what did you put into the model that's out?
Well, this specific one, the Volk, right, is a part of it's like the DC Kalis franchise. So there's 4 shoes in that franchise that all play a part from the original one, my very first one that you were just talking about, that came out in '99. Yep. So that silhouette, let me rewind a little bit. What I did learn is that people love different styles and different feels, and some like a thicker cup sole, some like the Volk, like which you were talking about. Some people like the old school stuff. Some people like the real technical, hug your foot crazy. So this shoe is part of a 4-shoe franchise, which includes all of those. Yeah. So the Volk is like the slim, you can wear it to the beach. You can wear it to the when you're skating and you feel your board real good. You can, it just goes along. It just goes with everything. It's real slim. It's lightweight. It's not very expensive, and it gives that option for the people that want to be involved with the Kalis franchise, but may not like the original bigger shoe or the cup sole or the technical shoe. So that's what I learned, was to take the silhouette and the design from the shoe that does really well, and then just spread it out across the board so everyone can enjoy it.
That's rad.
So I'm not a shoe guy. Like I'll admit this. Okay. Nate has seen my personal style in person. Not really there. I'm such a basic shoe guy that when I was in high school, I did skateboard. I don't skateboard anymore. I busted my ass so hard one time. I was like, that's enough for me. Like I swear to God, I almost broke my tailbone. But it was actually DC. DC was my choice brand at the time. I bought one pair. I enjoyed it so much, I went and bought 3 more of that same pair, and I seriously wore the same style of shoe for like 5 years. Which I know like some people is like the lamest thing, but I'm like, I don't care. It works. It's comfortable. I don't.
You like it? What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do it too. I mean, I wear the same. Sometimes it's tough to try to get into the new one,
I just
try to get used to it, and
I don't need a new style. Plus, I'm also the guy where it's like if I buy a shoe over $80 and I wear it outside, I'm like scrubbing it when I get home to keep it clean. Like I could not, like I haven't seen the shoe yet. I'm gonna open it up here when Nate gives me the go ahead.
Yeah, dude. You gotta work through that whole FedEx box. So
I didn't know how it was packed. I didn't want to. I don't want to be this. I still
scrub my shoes, man. Like when there's a colorway that I'm really into, and I know it's only going to be around for 6-8 months or however long that colorway is going to be around. Yeah, man. When I wear them, and then I'll bring them in, and I'll take a little toothbrush to the sole, and you know what I mean. I try to keep them fresh for as long as possible.
Like there was one time I had a really nice pair of shoes.
Growing up in the Midwest, like if you ever pay like that much for a shoe, like with my family, we'd be like, wow, that shoe would better last you for like 20 years.
Yeah.
You got to take care of that shoe.
Yeah, that doesn't happen in skateboarding.
Not really, no.
That's what like started it all, right? It's like one time
my own shoes.
I had that nice pair of skateboarding shoes. I like scuffed them one time, and I was like, my heart sank. I was mortified. I was like, I can't believe I spent like $110 on these shoes and scuffed them.
But if they aren't scuffed, it means you're not skating.
Hey, do you remember? So maybe this was just a thing in my neck of the woods growing up here in Dallas, right? But it was always, I'm getting the shoe out. There was always a thing where people would cut their skateboarding shoes to make it look like they were hardcore skaters. Did that ever happen in your guys' woods?
Whoa!
I've never.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
You know what I'm talking about?
And I've seen people though, like we would use a thing called shoe goo to put on it to make the shoe last longer. And I've seen people just putting shoe goo on shoes without skating in them, so they had that like little shiny gleam on it,
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of my friends doing that, but the most egregious thing I saw was there were some kids that were skateboarding and they would take their boards, they'd take their decks, and they'd rub them sideways on like a curb or something. Yep. Give it like the scrapes, like as if they were doing like board slides and stuff like that. And like, I know you're not doing that. Like, don't damage your board that way. Yeah,
take some notes.
You've never seen a cleaner skateboard than my skateboards. Like it was.
You always know by the way the lines go on the bottom of the deck. You always know what they're doing.
Yeah. No. Ollies don't get your skateboards dirty.
Are they just standing on that tail, or are they actually doing something?
All right, so I have the box here. I opened it up. You want me to open it up, Nate?
Yeah, well, there's one. Yeah, there's one for Anuj.
Yep.
And then one for you.
My Anuj has baby feet. He wears a size 8. So. Whatever.
There you go. Save money on material.
I didn't want
to be here to defend himself. He's not here to defend himself.
No, he can't. He can't. He just had a kid, so he can't make fun of it. I didn't want to say anything, but I don't want to be that guy. But yesterday was my birthday, so Nate, this is your
happy birthday
gift to me.
Yeah, man.
There's really no way to be.
Happy birthday, Tim. I remembered.
It's weird, right? It's weird when a grown man mentions it, but it's like, people are like, oh, how was your weekend? Like, how are you not going to mention it's your birthday? But at the same time, I'm like a guy who just turned 30, making it a big deal that I had a birthday. It's weird.
Wow. Welcome to the club.
I'm opening it up. Ooh. Oh, I like the shoelaces. So here we go. Is this it? I like the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let me
You got it?
let's see if it's the same thing I got. Well, it come with this cool papers.
Yep, the cool
yeah.
paper
Oh.
with Alt and
Yeah.
DC's logo on it.
And then yeah, that's what I
The
got there.
shoelaces
Yeah,
are
sick.
like what
Beautiful.
I would call hunting orange. Like if
Yeah,
a,
Call of Duty
neon
style right
safety
there.
orange. Neon safety orange.
Yep, and they have Alt and DC logo on the shoelace. They have like the camouflage.
Yeah,
Actually, okay,
sick.
yeah, it's like a hunting. It reminds me of hunting with the camo on the side. I like
Did I
it.
got that right? Yeah. Yeah.
The orange, like insoles and the laces, look so good compared to the rest of the, because the rest of the shoe is so dark. It contrasts very nicely.
And even on the sole, yeah, I don't know if you saw it. The sole has Alt. So Nate, is it weird now for you? Is it trippy growing up as a skateboarder to now see Alt's logo next to DC's logo?
Yeah, dude.
Like,
yeah,
that's
I
gotta
mean,
be
like,
crazy.
so for sure. I mean, like, my older brother was like so into skating. Like, growing up, I had to be into skating and video, like everything that I was all about. And even now, like, I mean, I love wearing skate shoes just on the like as my daily choice. But yeah, getting to rock a pair of like pro shoes, it was like one of the very first things that I talked to the DC brand about when they're like, "What do you want to make?" And I was like, "Well, I want to make a statement about like stuff you wear at home, casual stuff like the slides and all that, villains and stuff." But I was like, I really wanted to make a skate shoe because it's just such a huge part of like what I love growing up and like what I love today. But yeah, like being able to like rock out the colorways and stuff, like I was just having fun with it. I love this like tiger camo and like the neon, like it's just fun. It was just really fun to do, and even cooler to just be like you can just jump on a board anytime and like they just perform really well. And you get to do stuff like this, man. Like you just get to interact with your friends about like, yeah, I love video games, I love skateboarding. Like this is just it's just fun. Like the fact that making doing a collab on a shoe of a skater that like inspired me to love skateboarding, and then I get to meet him on an esports show. Like that's super rad.
Well,
like,
thank you for those words, man.
Yeah, super rad. And I get to share it with my other friends, like my other friends who I met in my scene, other gamer people like who we all like grew up loving the same stuff, and like here we all like kind of get to hang out and do stuff like this. Like it's cool. Like I'm really proud of the ability to just like Josh was saying, it is surreal. Like we get really cool opportunities to like make cool things, share them with people we really care about, like challenge the archetype of our industry. It's like, why can't gamers make a skate shoe? That's pretty like, it's awesome. So, this is the kind of stuff that I think is just fun. It's like, just push yourself, like, push yourself to do more and share it with people who care. Like, so Tim, when TCR? Okay, I'm gonna get some clips of you skateboarding now, right? In your highlight reels.
You will highlight might be a stretch. There'll be images of me on a skateboard. It's been a while. It has been a while.
It's never too late.
I will definitely be that dad gamer skateboarder. Is it cool to wear pads while skateboarding? Because that was really lame when I did it.
You know what though? You're still around. You didn't break your skull.
No,
so good job.
no. But you were almost lame if you wanted to prevent having a concussion when I skateboarded. Okay. So maybe that was just peer pressure.
I want to hear Josh's opinion before I say anything on this topic.
Look, I'm all for safety, but the way I grew up in the whole thing was it was a pad-free zone. And the reason why I think it was a pad-free zone because it took away from the difficulty or the difficultness or whatever the wording is you want to use for if you did a trick down that 3 or 4 stair and you were padded up, well, you had this big safety factor, so it took away from the level of respect you would get for doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But don't get me wrong, like if a kid shows up to the spot and he's all padded up, I mean, who am I to judge him for the level of safety he wants? I mean, maybe he's got something else going on where he has to have certain protections and stuff like that. So it's never a, you know, we never made fun of people wearing pads at the skate spot. It was always just you raised your eyebrow and been like, wonder why he's got pads on.
Maybe that kid is a 30-year-old out of shape white guy who's just showing up to the park after not skating in 15 years.
Yeah, and like I said, these days are a little different too because, you know, people just don't make fun of people like that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, if you come to the spot wearing pads, like, it's literally not even a thought in people's head anymore. Like, look at this kid wearing pads. It's just not like that. However, I do know that when you're young and you're starting to learn, and I'm not talking about like 3 or 4 years old, I'm talking, you know, like 10, 11, 12 years old. If you're padded up and you're trying to skate the street, you could end up getting hurt later down the line once you unpad, because you'll be so used to falling with, you know, all your pads on that you might not have learned how to fall correctly. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And maybe that's just a weird, I could be completely wrong in that theory, but if I had a helmet on my whole life, I would not be trying to protect my head as much as I did growing up, you know?
Oh, I totally agree with you. Like, I think learning how to fall correctly from skateboarding, like, is a skill that is useful throughout your life, even if you don't skateboard as much anymore too.
Yeah, because when you're just starting out, you're only skating small stuff and you're only falling small. You're like low level falling, and as you're progressing on the bigger stuff, you're learning to fall as you're progressing the whole time, you know? But if you just start out just 100% padded up, I don't know if you learn how to fall to protect yourself or not. I don't know.
I never did the pads when I was skating, but when I skated there was a skate park I skated at in college, and they made you wear a helmet. And I will say that I did get a concussion on the street, but I took a head dive at the park one time, and that helmet probably prevented me from getting a second one. So there's pros and cons for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of curious, Josh, because you mentioned something a second ago about how, like, nowadays it's just, you don't make fun of, you know, it's just the times have changed, right? And I think in esports and in gaming, much like everywhere now with the whole Black Lives Matter movement and everything, we're all kind of taking that self look at each other, and gaming has had that. Do you kind of see from where skateboards started, and I think esports and gaming has that same view from the outside where, I mean, I think all of us have probably been told once in our lives that gaming and skateboarding you can't make a living off of those, right? It was an immature field, it was childish, whatever. Do you kind of see the whole scene as skateboarding kind of mature as you grow up in it?
I'm going to be honest with you, it's kind of age related. So, like, the older skaters that I skate with for sure have matured and have changed certain mentalities with things, you know, making fun of people or whatever it might be. The younger guys, I feel like, yeah, actually, you know what? It has changed through the younger dudes, because you wouldn't have seen us with like rollerbladers or, you know, BMXers or stuff like that in the early 90s, mid 90s. It was like you did not hang out with people outside of your genre. You know what I mean? But now you go to the park and all the young kids, I mean, they got every genre with them. You know what I mean? There's scooters and rollerbladers and skateboarders and girls with roller skates with the, you know,
the rubber stop
little rails in between their wheels, you know.
Yep.
I mean, they all hang out together now, so it's definitely different than it was in the early to mid 90s, you know. 100%. Yeah. So yes, to answer your question, yes, I've seen the mentalities change for sure.
And I think DoA then
way more open-minded.
From your angle then, because it's got to be the same thing with esports. You've seen where, because I know even when I was younger, and I just turned 30 yesterday. Yesterday was my birthday. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Young, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
The Tim birthday show. The Tim birthday special.
It was almost like you had your FPS players in gaming, like you had your guys who played shooters, and like if you played StarCraft or League, you were like a anime nerd weeaboo.
You were a nerd among nerds.
Yes, you really were. Like, for whatever reason,
StarCraft,
we're all gaming, and yet Counter-Strike made you cool and League of Legends made you a nerd.
Well, like
Whoa.
I mean, well,
I love League of Legends. Nobody ever called me a nerd one time.
Yeah. Well, you know, we
That's because you never hung out with Counter-Strike players.
League of Legends came out, we were already like out of high school, out of college a long time. So you and I, like, we didn't have to deal with any of this stuff. Like, but like, I mean,
Tim carried the burden for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up playing shooters and fighting games. Like I was in the arcade playing fighting games. I was skateboarding outside, and I was playing like shooters at home and stuff, right? And so I never really understood the like as far as skateboarding goes. Oh yeah, you would not hang out with rollerbladers at all. And bikers were always just annoying and dangerous to be around. Like you just not want to be around those guys, right? But as far as video games went, like I had a lot of friends, but back then, not now, you know. But I had a lot of friends who like were very genre specific with video games. Like if you were a shooter player, you were a shooter player. But I kind of played everything, and so I did fighting games and shooters. And then when I started working professionally in video games as a commentator, I started with StarCraft. So that was like, you know, for a dude who just played fighting games in the arcades, like that was like as far across the spectrum as you could go to Korea for StarCraft, right? So I think, but that was there. I never really experienced a lot of it personally, but I saw it a lot. But at this point, yeah, I think people are pretty chill with everything. Everyone's like, you know, you see a lot of fighting game players like tweeting about like the latest Japanese RPG that they've completed, right? So it's, you know, everyone's pretty chill with everything these days, which is good.
I like what Josh was saying about like, you know, the younger you go, like the more genres you carry with you, you know, and like, I think at first when, you know, you're thinking about like, you know, you know, we're going to do stuff with this esports league or this other esports league, and they're different genres, but I think it's the same way I carry like my love of art and design and, you know, skate culture and game culture. It's like, it's just what I carry with me. And I feel like we're that generation that just kind of lives when all of that's happening, you know, and we get to kind of shape where that goes. But I really dig that idea, man. Like we do carry a ton of genres with us, you know, and Tim just adds like the mustache, really.
It's true.
It's a pretty swell mustache at that.
Thank you.
That could be your new tagline for the show, dude.
I can't grow a mustache, man.
The mustache is all I can grow.
40-something years old. I can't grow a mustache. Or look, you got a beard. He's got the mustache.
DoA normally rocks facial hair
over there, but yeah,
I go back and forth.
I can't even do it. If I let it grow for 3 weeks, it'd almost look the same. It would just look a little dirty.
That sounds so convenient.
It is at times, but sometimes I don't feel like, you know, rough and tough. If I had a beard every now and then, I could yell at my kids more.
I don't think anyone would ever accuse you of not being, not appearing rough and tough. Like, seriously. But you know, I was wondering kind of too with all the genres starting to mix more, whether it's sports or whether it's esports. I wonder if part of it is just like the accessibility of being able to watch it. Because for me personally, like I definitely carried those anti-rollerblading, like BMX like prejudices for a while, right? But then I started watching like a lot of other videos, and like the X Games, I think I would credit a lot to, where like I'd be watching, you know, the vert comp or like the street comp, and then BMX would come on and I would just be watching. I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. And like, so just seeing it helped me gain a lot more respect for it, seeing it at that level, you know? And so where we've got so much accessibility with like Twitch TV and juke.gg and all those sites where you've got a lot of aggregate esports of different genres in one place, you just watch other stuff. And I think it helps you kind of gain a respect for like the effort that goes into it.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, a lot of that stuff just wasn't, it was so culture based that it wasn't, you couldn't see it unless you were following that specific culture. You know what I mean? Like before Facebook and IGs and all that, it was just, it would literally be like, what magazine are you going to buy, or who
Yeah,
did
you'd
you
be reading Transworld, but you wouldn't be reading anything BMX related, you know?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think you're right with, the X Games and all that stuff. It just really opened up like, oh, wow, there's all these types of like action sports is what they call them. To us, they were very culture based, they were very lifestyle driven. And at some point, when you started being able to see them all at TV in 1 2 hour sitting, you get to watch all these different, they were more sports based than they were culture based, but
Mhm.
same thing at the end of the day. Skateboarding is just skateboarding. It doesn't have to be someone's lifestyle versus someone's sport. It's the same. So yeah, I would agree with you on that for sure.
So I was always, don't judge me, okay? Because now I feel like I'm gonna be judged. I was always a rollerblader because I grew
I've
up.
come to peace with that. That's okay.
Whoa,
now.
whoa, Tim!
Me too.
Sponsorship of the show is over now.
I mean, so I grew up playing hockey in Detroit, so I'm like, skates, that makes sense.
All right.
Like
that
they're
makes
on
sense.
my feet. They're not gonna ever leave my feet. This makes
Sure.
sense. Brink came out, the movie Brink on Disney. See, you guys, I grew up in a different time than you. See,
Okay.
This is where I'm different. Is I grew up where the melting pot of action sports was already a thing. Like X Games, I think first started, and so I never had the separation. Also, another confession. I'm just gonna cover up Nate because I don't want to see his face when I say this. I also don't know how to ride a bike, so all I had was skateboarding or rollerblading.
Wow. So this is really a therapeutic birthday show for you, Tim.
Yeah, like
Man,
imagine
you're just like things you've had. You're almost on episode 200, and you're telling things you never told the world before.
248. And yeah, I'm just gonna say it out there that don't know how to ride a bike. So when I went to the skate parks and everything, and I saw the BMXers, I was like, that blew my mind. Because I was
Wait, to this day, you don't know how to ride a bike?
so there's a certain part, Josh, in life where
Is it yes
riding
or
a
no?
bike isn't
Yes or
important.
no?
Like, I tried at one point, it didn't work out. Just things happened, life moved on, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really need a bike. So I
mean,
never.
you ever seen those like whatever they are, Strider things or something where they're like bikes with no pedals,
Yeah,
and they
Yeah.
just kind of like scoot down the thing. You know what I mean?
I believe
Oh,
like
yeah.
3-year-olds use them. But yes.
Yeah, I think I still have my daughter's. We could that she learned on.
You know
I
what?
could send it down to you.
Next time, next time
FedEx
I'm in
over, yeah.
Michigan.
Josh, I got my Tim, I could send you that. You want it FedEx tomorrow, dude?
Well, I think there's a adult discrimination for Striders. I think they should make adult ones.
Well, all right. So
Well, just
Here's-
take the pedals off a bike and then you got one.
There you go.
So here's how I actually gained like more respect for rollerblading. You mentioned you rollerbladed, and this is going to be like the most 90s thing that's probably ever been said on the show. But I got my friends and I got pairs of soap shoes. Do you remember those things? They're the
Yeah.
shoes that had like the wax sort of plates in the middle,
Yeah.
so you could
Yeah.
be walking and
You
then
could
like jump on
grind
a
on
rail
the
or on an edge of
rail.
something and slide it. And so we couldn't obviously skateboard in school or we'd get in trouble. So once we stopped doing that, we had to like find another way to just have fun while we were walking around in school, right? So we bought those, and then we could jump on rails and do that kind of stuff. And like, you realize it's not as easy as just like jumping on a rail. You have to be very aware of like your foot placement and your ankle, placement and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, oh, so maybe there is a little bit more to this like rollerblading thing. I wasn't quite to that point of really appreciating it, but it was like it started that kind of like thought process in my mind.
I will say too, another thing that helps, I think, breach all of this is video games, because again,
Sure.
I had Tony Hawk Pro Skater, I had the BMX game. When you have all these different games, you kind of just grow up with that appreciation of like, oh, I can play this BMX game, I can play this, skateboarding game or whatever. Jet Set Radio is the only rollerblade game I know out there, but
It's a great game though.
it is
Yeah.
an amazing game. So I think it kind of throws it out there where it's like you're at least getting a little more exposed than normal.
Yeah, new media is definitely sort of like giving everyone the opportunity to appreciate things a little bit easier, which is great. Like it's awesome that everyone can kind of like appreciate the skill that goes into a lot of this stuff, and there's more peace at the skate park.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So
Well,
Josh, are
Is
you?
there
go
anything
ahead.
you got a bunch of super hardcore gamer dudes on this? Like, anything you want to know about video games or anything? Like, you ever been wondering about what the heck these weird gamer people are up to in the world, taking over the world?
Nah, I wish you guys could give me some good tips on how I could beat my buddy Mike Blayback at Call of Duty, because Mike Blayback's the DC photographer. I mean, he's an awesome photographer, and for some reason, he is just, I cannot beat him at Call of Duty, man. He just gets me every single time. Like,
why don't we get you hooked up with some of our pro Call of Duty buddies? Do a show, do this, so you can get tips like how Tim's gonna give us tips on shaping his mustache and polishing the rollerblades.
You teach me how to ride a bike. Yeah, you teach me how to ride a bike. I'll teach you how to play Call of Duty.
DoA can cast it. And,
that'd be amazing.
Yeah, man, we'd love to help you out.
That'd be real cool. But yeah, other than that, I'm good, man. I just really appreciate you guys getting me on, showing me and teaching me and talking about a little bit of this gaming culture and stuff like that. It's just awesome learning, and I appreciate the opportunity, you know.
Yeah.
Are you
I get to rock these. So thank you for inventing a shoe that I got to have some fun with collaborating on. Pretty rad.
Oh man, that's awesome. Thank you guys for sure.
Real quick,
shoe looks sick, and it was cool getting to talk to you after. It's surreal after like all these years of like watching, you know, talking to the man himself. So it's been neat.
Well, Josh, thank you, man, for hanging out with us for a little bit. We'll let you go, get whatever you got to do, and thanks again, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, guys. I mean, I'm super stoked on this whole deal for sure.
Right on.
That's
Thanks,
awesome.
Josh.
Yeah.
All right, brother.
Right on,
We'll
guys.
talk to you later, man.
All right, see you guys.
See ya. All right. Well, there you go. That was Josh. Cool dude. Chill guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume most pro skateboarders are chill.
Yeah. Chill.
I haven't really encountered a lot of non-chill, just skateboarders in general.
Yeah.
Because you have to be chill if you're gonna try a trick like 100 times in one day. If you're not a chill person, you just can't do it. So I think by necessity, skateboarders have to be fairly chill people.
That's probably
I love that we're like doing the post show on skate culture. It's like, Tim, is this like one of the weirdest episodes ever because Anuj isn't here?
It's definitely not our normal episode. We normally don't talk about skateboarding as in depth, or shoes for that matter. But tell me another esports podcast that would.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Some quality content right there.
Yeah, that's just what makes.
And you have DoA on the show.
Oh my gosh.
And we can talk about Warhammer.
We could talk about Warhammer. We can talk.
Have you ever had DoA or talked about Warhammer?
I'm a man of many interests.
No, I'm right there. Look at behind me. I have like my office is just. I have guitars. I have.
I have guitars too, actually.
There you go. See, I got my Warhammer battle station right behind me.
Yeah, you do.
I got my Gundam models. I also do the Gundam models.
I've got some Gundam models right in this glass case.
Look
behind me.
I've often said this before. If it weren't for my wife and breathing child, people still assume I'm a virgin. Like, just given my hobbies.
Oh, come on. You know, we just had a conversation about how times have changed, and like some of those stigmas around various things have gone away, and here you are perpetuating it.
I mean, it's just, I'm just saying what I feel. And I know if I were single now, I tricked my wife. I lied. That's really what it comes down to.
Wow.
If roles were just new now and I met her now, not a chance in hell. If she walked into this office as a single woman, she'd be like, no, I'm not. I'm not doing
My
this.
wife didn't believe me when I told her what I did as a job when we had our first date in Korea. She thought I was joking and that I just like hadn't told her until like she actually looked it up, and she's like, oh, he actually was telling you the truth. He actually does just yell about video games all day.
So what?
I'm like,
so that's interesting then. So you met your wife, because again, I met my wife. I could hide it, right? Because we were young enough. But you met her. You were too far in. There was no hiding it.
Right.
So
no.
That was kind of interesting. I mean, is she a gamer in general, or?
No, not at all. She's not a gamer, never has been a gamer, never really wants to be a gamer. She'll play like Mario Kart and things, you know, she'll do like the fun, you know, very casual games, and we'll play together and do like Mario Party or something, you know, but no, she would never play like Skyrim or something like that, or she won't watch esports. She's not into it at all. But that's great. I actually love that because we share a lot of other interests. And then the fact that she's not a gamer at all gets me to be able to have the opportunity to do a lot of things that I would not have done otherwise if, you know, I was with someone who games. So it's she's not a gamer, and that's working out great because she respects what I do. Like that's the thing. It's that like she's not a gamer and she's not interested in it, but she understands why I am and she gets it, and she's totally fine with that, you know, which is all I ask. Just understand it.
just accept it.
Yeah.
I feel the same. People always ask
like,
too.
I'll just say, like, when I met you, Eric, like, I already knew what you did. I watched you on television or broadcast or whatever, like 1,000 times. But it was the non-obvious thing when you're into, like, we were talking about like music and like grunge, and then you start talking about skateboarding, and then you start talking about drawing. And I was like, whoa, you're an artist too? You draw? So then we would just go and hang out and go to the cafe and just like draw and talk about whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we became friends, was like we the obvious stuff was out there. It's like, oh yeah, we could talk about video games and all this stuff. But I was like, dude is an artist. That's rad. Like, let's do something together. And that was really a fun thing to learn and to develop. So now I'm like, Tim, I know you got the show, but now we're going to learn how to ride a bike together. I'm going to do that. That's going to be our thing, man.
He's going to be riding that bike on your half pipe within 6 months.
Look,
that would be amazing.
There's content in that. I could totally go to California when everything gets back to normal, and you could definitely just create some content around me trying to ride a bike.
Oh, also, Eric taught me about Warhammer, and that then I learned Tim was into Warhammer, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get my two friends together, and so now here you are.
I can show you real quick. I'll show you my battle station is right over there.
Very nice. Very nice. For those who don't know, for our listeners, again, we don't talk about Warhammer a whole lot, but it's a miniature figurine. Now, do you play or do you just paint?
I do both. Obviously, like when you're a functioning adult, you generally paint more than play because that's what you have time to fit into your schedule.
Yeah.
Rather than like the 2+ hour, 3+ hour games of Warhammer. But I do love playing, but most of it is painting. And I have a degree in studio art, so I was able to kind of take a lot of the skills I learned from like oil painting and all that kind of stuff and apply it to miniatures, because as I see it, they're kind of just little 3D canvases, you know?
Right.
And been having a lot of fun with it. It's great. I've been pretty addicted for a couple of years, and I sadly have not been doing as much of it during quarantine because I've been like way more busy than I was before with esports stuff. But yeah, still getting a little bit of time in here and there.
Tim, you paint too, right? Or do you just what do you do?
So I have really bad hobby ADD, like really bad. So I will put figures together, and then they will sit unpainted for years, and I'll play with them. Like I'll go play, but I just don't paint. So I am learning to paint. I actually got into Warhammer. My buddy way back in high school was huge into it and the Lord of the Rings miniatures.
Oh, yeah.
And so I always used his to play more so than paint. But yeah, I'm getting into the painting side of it more to actually care about it, not just like slap some blue on a Space Marine and be like, oh, no, this looks good to me. So
you can, you know, there's a whole battle ready thing. You can use the contrast paint now to get your army battle ready really fast, and it looks okay on the board. Like if you're not, I always said like if you're not entering competitions or something with your painting, then like if you're happy with how it looks, that's all that really matters.
But it's much to like your point now though. That's when I had time to battle. Now I have time to paint, and I'm like, these figurines look like ass. And I'm like, I see your Instagram, and I'm like, how do you
Yeah.
do these shades and lighting? Like, I don't get it. Like, I have the same paint, I have the same brushes. It's like, but I can't get it. So it's very impressive. Like, the ones who
It
can
is.
paint, I find is, like you said, it's like almost like an art form in itself.
Well, we
I-
did a painting. Eric and I did a painting session because I was like, "Oh, why don't you paint some canvas and I want to paint a Warhammer figure, you know?" But I just was so into the detail, and he was showing me how detailed he gets, and I was like, "Whoa," you know, I had no idea. So then, a lot of the really fine painting that I do, it totally rivals the like how you have to paint these figures. But recently, I've been repainting some of the Space Marines, and like kind of how I paint, even like how these shoes have like crazy neon on them. I've been like metallics and neons and stuff. So Tim, if you want me to make you a custom painted army, dude, that's all like neon and chromed out,
Yeah.
just let me know.
Actually, so I follow the Warhammer subreddit, and there's actually been a guy posting. I don't know if you guys follow the subreddit for Warhammer,
I do.
Yeah, there's a dude who's been posting like his crazy neon orc army, and it looks so sick.
Yeah. Because he does it in a very sort of almost comic book sort of cartoon style almost, you know, where it's like lots of big blocks of color and not like a lot of subtle shading and stuff, which is really neat. It's cool to see what people can do with that, where you can go the very traditional style of shades, highlights, all that kind of stuff. Try to make it look as realistic of a three-dimensional object that could really exist that you can. But at the same time, you can go the complete opposite direction, right? Like I'm sure you've seen these too, where someone does like a big vehicle, but it's all in black and white and gray. So it's like, but it's all in really hard lines too. So it's like a comic book basically, you know. And so, but it works in a 3D, you know, three-dimensional sense too. So there's a lot of really unique things you can do in the hobby with that, and that's one of the things I love the most about it is the customizability of how you know approach your army or a specific figure.
Yeah. So I also like.
Yeah.
Speaking of, it's like
I just love that this is like the weirdest TCR show you've probably done recently.
Oh no, it's ever for sure. For sure. I think maybe the only
welcome.
other weird one is when we had Blue on. He's a caster now for like the Rainbow Six League, and I didn't realize until like halfway through the interview I forgot to hit record, which is always super fun when you don't hit record on a podcast, because you can't really just be like, "Hey guy, can we like redo those questions?" You just kind of have to own up to it and go with it. So that was always, it was just a more awkward dismount. It was an awkward second half of the interview as he's like, "These guys are fucking morons." But it's like,
it happens to the best of us.
It
You can't
really
beat yourself up,
does.
you know?
It really does. If people really knew how much technical difficulties that is just straight up user error with this show, it'd be an embarrassment. It really would. It really would. So, DoA, what do you have then lately going on? Because like you said, you've been busier now, oddly enough. And I feel like that's kind of the case, right? It's because people know you're not going anywhere. So they're like, "Hey, we can get you every day of the week and not worry about air travel or anything."
It's a bit of that. It's also a bit of when you just go fully freelance and leave like a big league, finding work becomes another full-time job, you know? So it's a lot of hours are just like finding work basically at this point, which is normal for a freelance individual. That's kind of what you have to do, you know. So I think that's where a lot of the time comes into it. But so you combine that, you add that on to, you know, the preparation you have to do for games already. You're doing more games simultaneously that you did before, and so there's more scenes to have in-depth knowledge about. So yeah, it's been busy. It's been a lot of fun, but it's been really busy this year.
So what do you then kind of find as far as, because right now I know I follow you on Twitter, so you do a lot of like team fighting tactics.
Yes, fight tactics, yeah.
And for those who don't know, you come from, well, you have much a larger background, but more recently the Overwatch League.
Right, most recently, yeah.
And so very different games. I mean, you couldn't be any more different than a team fighting tactics and Overwatch. What is would you say as a caster is more difficult? An Overwatch League type game where study the rosters, you have everything there, or team fighting tactics where you can do all your studying, all the work you can, but the amount of RNG that's in that game makes half of it go out the window?
I disagree with you actually. I think on the surface it looks like RNG is a big factor in team fight tactics, but I think if you sort of break down what the players are doing in the game, and that's one of the difficulties with fight tactics as far as casting it goes, is bringing that across. That the RNG is actually pretty minimal in the game, and can be mitigated with a lot of like positioning things on the board. Being very good at manipulating and knowing averages and percentages is extremely important. So because you have a shop with 5 quote unquote random champions, but each cost level has a specific percentage chance to appear, and so a pro player will look at all the other boards in the lobby, look at all the other champions from the different cost tiers. If there's ones that they're looking for, are there already ones on the board? Because there's a finite amount of each champion in the pool. So you can deduce, it's very difficult, but you can deduce what the likelihood of rolling something is. And so that takes a lot of the randomness out of it, because you're only rolling if you have an acceptable percentage chance of hitting what you want. And then, just a lot of the mechanics in the game are not random. The targeting is always based on something, and so because it's based on something, each champion can be moved around and manipulated to capitalize on that, those targeting parameters. So yeah, that is one of the cool things of teamfight tactics, but it's also one of the difficult things as well, is that it is very skillful, but it doesn't look that way on the surface. So bringing that out, as far as Overwatch League goes, obviously, or Overwatch the game goes, obviously, like a lot less RNG. There's really not, any RNG in the game aside from maybe like a little bit of weapon spread here and there. So that it's more like, talking about the team interactions, talking about, the strategies that are being employed there and all that. I will say Overwatch was the most difficult game I've ever casted. And that's just because it's very hard to see what's going on, simply. I think both as a viewer, but also as someone casting the game, because you never really have a complete picture of what's happening. So building the narratives within the game, setting up the plays, if the observers aren't on the same page as the casters are, it can be really, really tough. And it often was. So that's kind of the thing that stands out with Overwatch, is just how difficult it is to cast from a technical standpoint because of the incomplete information you have. So there you go. Long answer to a very short question.
No, I mean, that's great, because I think for a lot of people, when it comes to like the auto chess games, it's just the surface level knowledge, right? Like for me, I play it.
Like any sport, really.
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing in them, and I blame RNG for me sucking, which I'm still gonna blame RNG.
If it makes you feel better,
that's how this works. That's how DoA. That's how this show works. You blame RNG, and you always blame the bottom fragger.
Of course.
That's exactly how this works.
So here, let me ask you a question, actually,
yeah,
because
this
is an interesting topic, and Nate can chime in on this too, of course. But like, there's the discussion I always have with people: is it more frustrating to lose in a single player game or a team based game? And I would say I'm actually much more frustrated losing in a team scenario, because there are elements going on that are outside of my control. I can't control how good or bad my teammate plays, and so I hate losing because of that. Whereas if I lose a game, individual game like StarCraft or TFT, then I can't feel bad because it was just me. I had every opportunity to do better in that game and I didn't, which is more acceptable to me. But a lot of people see it the opposite way, right? Where when there's no one to blame but yourself, you feel worse. Whereas if you can blame a teammate, then it feels better. So where do you stand on this?
So I think a professional always finds excuses. You're like, if you really want, I can find an excuse on just about any platform. But to answer your question in a more serious manner, I think it's human nature to not blame yourself first, right? And I think that is why a team-based game is more frustrating, because you are pushing that outwards to your teammates as far as why you lost. It's never your fault, right? Even if I'm the bottom fragger, it's because everyone baited me, right? It's just, that's like, you always have like levels of blame in a team-based game for me personally, like this is one of the reasons I love fighting games so much, is because it's just me. If something happens, I knew it was me, but I also know it's up to me to go and watch the VOD or go in a practice room and figure out what I did wrong. So it's a little easier to cope with, right?
Right.
Where with me in a team-based game, there is no coping, because obviously I would be a professional Valorant player if it weren't for my teammates.
Right. That's what's holding all of us back. Really.
Yeah, it's really, we would all be professionals if it weren't for our teammates. So that's my opinion. I think that's why I think the team-based games can wear people out, as far as, just burnout.
They pick Sage. They died before they had a chance to res every single round.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's like, how many times have we played games?
Picking that.
And everyone does it, right? Like, I've done it too, where you're a backseat gamer, where, I'm watching someone and they peek left and die from a guy on the right-hand side. And you're like, why didn't you look there? And it's like, well, had I known.
There's a wall there.
Right. Like, I had two options, left or right. Had I known he was on the right, do you think I would have looked left? Like, yes, I purposely looked left just for the challenge of it. Like,
see, then you just criticize their map awareness. You'd be like, what's the likelihood of someone being down one hallway to the other? You should have known it'd be more likely to be down the other side,
Yeah, it's just.
You'd still blame them.
Yeah, to me, and I know Nate plays a lot of single player games, right? And
it's because of this. Like, you can be exceptional solo on something and just annihilate, but like, you never really know how it's going to go on the team. I really suffer from, like, I don't want to let other teammates down. Like, if I drop the ball on something, like, that's always in the back of my mind, is like, I don't want to, like, let the team down. So when I'm playing solo, you just push yourself as far as you can, and you can try 1,000 times over and over and over. And then you think, like, okay, now I'm going to go into this and be better on the team. Like, I always feel more confident on the team knowing that I've really, pushed myself as far as I can. But yeah, oftentimes it's way more stressful on the team, for sure. Yeah.
And I'm also...
I tilt because I feel I've let my team down and let myself down.
And to me, I think that's just human nature. And that's why it's like, people always bring up video games in this negative light of, oh, it's just people yelling at each other or whatever. Look, I'm the same way when I play a game. I'm the same way if I'm playing hockey, right? If I'm playing hockey, I'm running my mouth on the bench. I'm yelling at people. Some people call it toxic. I call it strategy. I like to think, Michael Jordan, he was a smack talker. I'm like Michael Jordan with all the smack talk, but none of the skill. So
always forget the last part, because I love your smack talk. You're great at smack talk.
See, but to
we
me,
need more of that in esports. Honestly, we need more of, like, legitimate good trash talk, because, like, there is such a thing as, like, good trash talk and bad trash talk.
Of course.
In sports, right?
Of course.
In esports, like, good trash talk is witty. It makes you laugh. It flexes on people. So, like, yeah, you're like dissing them, right? And you're like trying to get under their skin mentally. But good trash talk does that in a way that's entertaining for others, right? And it's never like a personal attack, right?
There are
so,
rules
like,
to
we need more
smack
of
talking.
that good trash talk.
There's
and
rules.
Tim has a style. That's like part of Tim's style,
Yeah.
too. And I love it, because I'll show up for that. I'll show up to be entertained by that.
Yep.
So you gotta, like, that's your superpower right there.
There are rules, because I follow the rules. Okay, there are rules to smack talking. DoA, you said it. Rule number 1: don't make it personal. Like, whether someone has a high-pitched voice or they stutter, or if it's in person, you leave it out. Don't say it, because you're not going to get on anyone's good side with that, right? Leave it out. You leave it in the game. I'm a firm believer that if a game adds a crouch feature, it's for the sole purpose of teabagging. Like, there's no tactical advantage to crouching.
It's called tactical crouching, and it's really useful for dodging headshots. You never know when someone's someone's targeting you.
You
And
just
so-
earned that esports consultant title right there. Tactical
Oh.
crouching.
No, we've been saying so Monty and I we started saying that when we started casting Overwatch because we couldn't say like it's harder to say teabagging on the broadcast when you're on ABC, right, or Disney XD, right? So we're like, oh, that's just they're just tactical crouching, it's everyone knows what it is, but that's like it's a meme now in the Overwatch world where it's he's not teabagging, he's tactical crouching.
I always that was always a turn in gaming, I think, when we dropped a lot of the gaming lingo for the better, in my opinion. So I will say this. So
Sure.
Here on this podcast, Anuj and I typically, we're older. Anuj just had his first kid. We're gamer dads. And so is Nate. We kind of lean more towards like the conservative side of like, hey, what would mass consumptions feel about this, right? We want
Sure.
to bring esports to the masses. You kind of have to give and take a little bit when it comes to that.
Yeah, you have to understand that esports is like a little bit irreverent, and we always put like the initial idea was to put a PG-13 rating on it,
Yeah.
where it's like you can be a little bit edgy, but again, don't be hurtful, obviously, don't be offensive straight up, but also don't like make it completely Fisher Price, like don't make it completely like
Yeah.
toddler friendly.
I think
right?
like in gaming, I remember growing up, a big lingo was like, oh, we raped him. Like as in you dominated him. Like that lingo out the door. Like that when you hear it and it's cringe now.
That was very common, but that was like never okay. So I am glad that like that's something that's kind of been expunged from the esports vocabulary for the most part.
Yeah.
Certainly on broadcasts. Yeah.
So I come from traditional media. I worked in radio for 7+ years. So I kind of come from that world, right? Always grown up. I mean, I've played esports. I've been in it forever, but my professional side comes from the traditional media.
Okay.
If you couldn't tell from my just professionalism on the show.
Absolutely. Your voice sounds very professional.
Thank you.
Got a good voice.
Thank you. Was that any type of like, did anyone ever approach you when going into the Overwatch League or when you started coming on TV? Like, hey, these are media training rules.
Oh no, but they didn't really need to. With me, like I think I kind of always had a reputation that I was safe. I've always strived to be someone that no one should ever need to worry about putting on a broadcast in front of a camera, and I've done that. So we didn't really have to deal with any of that, but there was like silly stuff. Like once Monty and I got scolded because we mentioned Fruit Loops on a Disney XD broadcast, where apparently on Disney XD you can't mention anything junk food or sugary. And like when we were kids, like cereal was just
oh my god, that was every other commercial.
Like, yeah, all the ads were for sugary cereals, right? But apparently now it's against FCC regulations.
Yeah.
To even mention something
See,
as dangerous as Fruit Loops on a broadcast not marketed, but like on a channel that is generally marketed towards children. So we got a Fruit Loops.
It's also a big like no just in general to bring up other brands that aren't sponsor brands. Like,
right.
It just that
it's very esports though to bring up like tons of different referential things, whether it's movies or brands and all that kind of stuff. And that is, I think, as far as brands go specifically, that's something where you do need to adapt a bit when you're on these more high profile broadcasts where they do have sponsors and they do have certain expectations about what can and can't be said about their competitors and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, thankfully it seems like movies and TV are still fair game for now, but other brands we've definitely had to be a bit more careful with, and that's just kind of goes to the territory. Like we all want the esports scene to grow, and as it grows, this is just something that comes along with it. So it might be a little bit of friction. Oh no, we lost Nate again, but he's back.
Oh, he's back.
But it's something you just kind of have to deal with, in the esports sphere as our industry gets bigger.
So do you kind of deal with that same thing, Nate, as far as, because you are a brand, right? So you kind of created
that's tricky,
that.
man. It's tricky too, because like when you found a brand, like there's such a close association with you as a person, and when you have staff, like they like look at you as you're kind of the personification of the brand, right? So and like stuff that you're interested in, even this show, right? It's like, I like your show, I like DoA, I like skateboarding. Suddenly, like, what you're doing is a reflection of what your interests are as a person. Like, it's
Mhm.
hard to separate that stuff. And if anything, the further you go, like, the more it's expected to, like, embrace those personal elements of it. Like, I love art, so you're gonna see art in the work. You're gonna see it in the brand. You're gonna, oh, I love, like, the way you guys are on the show, just your personalities. Like, I just think it's fun. So here we are, right? And like, so yeah, I mean, it's especially as a, you know, in our industry, like in a games industry, it's like, I would think it's a little boring. Like, I actually really like what Josh said about, like, you carry a lot of genres with you.
Mhm.
Like, I love many types of games, man. But like this morning, one of the most fun things I have now was like, I wanted to play like 4-player, Minecraft Dungeons, like with the kids, and like the whole family can play that game. So like my appreciation of what games are to me now is like I get to share that joy with other people. Like, there's a lot more joy in it, like experiencing just like, yeah, we all love this thing. Some people are exceptional at it. I have friends who are all like exceptional, best in the world at certain games. I'm not going to be that guy. Like, I'm going to be a fan of games and experience games, but like, I think like the freedom of being an independent brand is like, you can find inspiration from so much, right? Like, we can find inspiration from every game out there. Every game community out there can be a part of our identity. I think that's super cool. I enjoy
Yeah.
that part. This is probably one of my favorite episodes, Tim. It is pretty random.
It is different, but that's one of the things though that I love with the podcast is, so when I first started it 2 hosts ago and many years ago, is I always wanted to do like a traditional sports talk show where we talk about every esport. We're not just a Counter-Strike. We're not just a League of Legends. We talk about it all. And it's all about across the industry as well, right? If we want to talk about skateboarding and how that relates and whatever, right? The brand side of it, I think that's just as important when it comes to getting esports out there. All right. I've had a lot of people coming up to say, hey, you should separate it and do 3 different podcasts. Do one Counter-Strike, do one of this, one of that. But I've also had a shit ton of listeners and people say, like, yo, I come from the Overwatch side. I never watched Counter-Strike, but I love listening to your show, and now I'm starting to watch Counter-Strike more. Right? So I think there's the cross-pollination in just general, I think is important when it comes to kind of spreading it out. Because I think that's also a thing, and you both can even speak on this probably better than me, is the people like to throw out esports as this billion-dollar industry, right? Oh, there's so much money in esports. It's billions of dollars. Just start it up, right? Like, just make a game and start an esport up. There's billions of dollars in it. No, there's like 95% of that is in like 4 or 5 games. And then it trickles down to the others where you could have a scene, but you're not getting $1 billion. Like, you're not selling franchise. There's only certain games that can sell a franchise spot for $20+ million. You can't, I don't want, you guys are associated with games. So
And here's the thing too, is we
that.
still have yet to see if investing that much into a franchise in esports in this way is worth it or not.
Yeah.
Let's be honest here. We don't know if that's actually like worth it at this point. And I think the answer to that is going to be on a case-by-case basis. Maybe it is for certain games, maybe it's not for other games, maybe certain broadcasts make it worth it, maybe other broadcasts don't make it worth it. I always like roll my eyes when I hear the whole like, oh, it's $1 zillion industry. It's like, yeah, man, but like, it's still, where's that money going, right?
Yeah.
Because, is it going to the players? Is it going to the broadcast? Is it going to executives? Is it going to developers? Like, where that money is going is vitally important in terms of, how successful we can rate esports as an industry. And I think there's a lot of questions about that right now, in that which lead to, you know, the eye rolling, because sure, maybe this money exists in the scene somewhere, but how much of that is actually going to better the scene, you know, and the people in it? And I think that's what we kind of need to start thinking about a little bit more.
I think it's also kind of the expectation too, right? Like I think about it with like Overwatch League, okay? I'll use them for the example just because that's always like the example people talk about when it comes to the franchising and paying 20
Right.
plus. Is like, what are the expectations of getting that money back? Because for me, if the expectation is, hey, we're going to get the money back, but we really won't see profit until, say, Overwatch 3 10 years from now. Like, okay, that's fine if that was your expectations going in. But if some owners who came from outside of esports just thought this was going to be like investing into an NFL team where you'd see profit, you know, the next season, then that's, I think, where we have that issue when, you know, that's where we need esports consultants, right? Quote unquote, to talk to them and being like, yo, there is a lot of money here, but it's not, you know, the money's there, but the flow isn't quite up to speed as what you might think.
Sure. And like where it goes is going to be directly related to what the level of return is going to be, right? So and you know, I don't think any one person has all the answers as far as what the best way to, you know, run a league like that is. I have a lot of ideas about it, which I've shared a lot on other interviews and podcasts and things like that. But it's, and I think that's part of the industry right now is finding, you know, the best way to do that, right? Because you hope that anyone out there that is involved in the industry is interested more in the development of this industry, in terms of being excited about getting competitive gaming out there, being excited about creating something that gives a lot of jobs to people. Creating jobs should be a very important thing to people in esports. And I think right now in the industry, profit and returns need to be on the back burner. Like, if we do a good job with that other stuff, then profit and returns will come, right? But if we're only focused on making money right now, I think I can tell you this industry is way too new for that to be a reliable plan. And you're doing a disservice to it as well, because where, you know, you have to, it's the old, you have to crawl before you can walk, you know, and you have to walk before you can run. Like, you know, we need to the investment is great, but it needs to be going to the right things for the industry to actually grow, and for those profits to actually emerge at some point, because I believe they can, but the process needs to be refined and intact and iterated, and the people pulling the purse strings have to have their minds in the right place, I think. And I'm not sure that all of them do right now, in general, not just talking about Overwatch League, but just in the sphere in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing it in many games and genres other than just Overwatch. And I think that's just part of, you know, I kind of roll my eyes when I hear esports bubble, right? Because I think for people, it just depends on when you came into esports and the scene, right? As far as what is that? I remember, you know, a tournament being at Circuit City, and they had like one line of bleachers, and looking at my friends thinking, we made it, boys. Like, this is it, right?
Yeah.
And I think of like people in other sports, like those niche sports, like bowling, right? Do you think when bowling made it on ESPN on Sundays, do you think they just thought to themselves and their community, like, we made it. This is huge. We're on ESPN. It's only up from here, but eventually, no offense to professional bowlers out there, they did hit a ceiling, right? Like, bowling is never going to.
I don't think anyone that was truly into bowling cares how many people watch bowling, you know? And I think at the end of the day, like, anyone who truly cares about esports, like, you only care about the viewership in as much as it's you know, growing the industry and being able to share it with more people, and being able to create something that's sustainable to give more people jobs, right?
Yeah,
So
I think I go with DoA on that one. It's like, you got to believe in the category. You got to put in the work to build the category. You know, I think we've all seen like the early days, and like whether or not any of us, believe franchising or any of the league, it's like, I think we're all willing to show up and be like, we want to help build this thing. Like, I can't wait to, like, I don't think there is an end point to any of this. Like, I think it's like, that's the fascinating part, is we get to help live during this time when we get to help shape it. And like, it's how big can you imagine it can become is really the pursuit. Is like, we can articulate that entire category for many years to come, right? And that's the fascinating part, is it's like, we didn't inherit it, it's being developed. So I mean, that's like, there's no limit to that. I love that.
And like I said, I think it's for each era of esports, right? We each have our own we made it moment, right? And I just think it's important. I would rather see, because everyone thinks they have the answers as far as what's going to make esports take it to the next level. Some people say it's franchising. Some people say it's not franchising and you need to go back to the way we used to do things. Some people think it's all third-party tournaments. Some people think it's the game, the dev ran tournaments. It's all whatever. It works a million different ways for a million different games. But I personally would rather see an attempt at something new, like the Overwatch League did with franchising, and then adjust it from there, than to not try it at all. Like, I would rather attempt and fail than to not try.
Oh yeah. I mean, I helped, build the Overwatch League, right? And so I think franchising was a fantastic idea. And I think they proved what they were out to prove, which is that geolocated teams, regional based teams can work in esports. Which it totally does. I mean, like, look at NYXL. They have created like a really awesome brand around their esports team, right? And I think the goal of the initial sort of baseline goal of the Overwatch League, which was to prove that franchising and regionalized teams, I don't know, that was so hard to say, works in esports. It absolutely does. That's been proven. What happens to the league now, who knows? But like, that initial core concept, I think, was a successful experiment.
Awesome. Well, that's all I got. Do you guys have anything else?
Tim, happy birthday, dude. This was your birthday special. Can we call it the Tim birthday special?
We can. We can call it whatever we want. It's my show. Anuj isn't here.
That's what I love about this show.
I can call it whatever I want. Thank you. Happy Father's Day to all the...
I miss hanging out with you guys, so this is fun. Like, Hey, Tim, we should hang out sometime.
We should catch up. Yeah.
I miss our sketching sessions at local cafes and stuff. We'll have to do that again at some point.
Yeah. You got a new coffee mug for the next time.
Yeah, what?
Oh, well, that coffee mug I sent you. I made you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep, I've been drinking out of that. I looked over. It's not on my desk at the moment, but I have been using it. It's great because I love the mugs that are wider, but then they come like they narrow a little bit more towards the top. I've never described a coffee mug in such detail before, but because it does such a good job of keeping the liquid warm,
Next time we all hang out, let's do.
Yeah,
we'll all drink coffee at a cafe and paint Space Marine Warhammer together.
That sounds awesome.
Let's do that.
We will be the coolest kids at the coffee shop.
If we go to Dallas, we can go to Grapevine, Texas, where the Warhammer Citadel is, and then they actually have a cafe in their store.
So let's do that. No joke. I used to live in Grapevine.
Oh, really?
I live 10, 15 minutes away from that.
We'll ride
bikes. I was there in January, and I finally got to go. It was amazing.
It's awesome. So
20-minute bike ride, Tim. You can hang with that.
Yeah. There you go.
Like, that would probably take me all day.
Okay.
You brought it all the way around. You brought it full circle. I appreciate that.
All right, so here's the thing. When things get back to normal, we'll have coffee in LA and paint Warhammers in Dallas.
Oh, and nice.
Somewhere in between, I'll ride a bike down the ramp you have, Nate.
The content can be you learning how to ride a bike on a bike trip from LA to Dallas.
Oh, wow.
Through the desert.
Wow.
There you go.
Do it.
There you go. All right, DoA, before I let you go, all right, we like to get liners from all the people we have on the show.
Oh.
So it's like a audio signature, if you will. So if you
Oh,
could just
wow.
state your name, like, hey, this is DoA, and you're listening to The Center Ring.
Oh, okay. Hey, this is DoA, and you're listening to The Center Ring.
Perfect. Thank you. Like a professional. It's like
Great.
you've done it before. Nate, you got anything else?
No, this is fun. Thank you for letting us come on the show, Tim. I love the show. You know that. You're an awesome dude. Happy Father's Day. Happy birthday. Enjoy your shoes.
I will. Happy Father's Day to all the gamer dads out there. DoA, you're married. You got to join. See, now DoA's that weird one. You got to join the gamer dad club.
We'll get there. I'll get there eventually.
I mean, quarantine's not a bad time to do it.
Hey, you never know, right?
I mean, look, got some time to kill.
Hey, I can't wait because like outside of gaming, like I got to figure out what order I'm going to show my kids the Star Wars movies in. Like there's a lot of stuff to decide, Yeah. So I'm looking forward to solving that, for myself.
You also have that internal look. Like I have this issue now because my kid turned 9, right? So he's like being more interested in like the phone than he used to be. Like yesterday for my birthday, I watched Django with him, and like afterwards, I was like, "Oh, is that a good idea?" Like,
wait, you watched Jenga? Is there like
Django, like the movie Django?
Oh, Django. Okay, I thought you said Jenga, like the board game, and I was like, "There's a movie."
We just
I know
watched.
they're making
we just went to Jenga YouTube
really?
and watched professional Jenga players all day. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you do have that internal struggle now where you're like, man, now I'm a dad, and now I understand what my parents meant when they were like, hey, don't play too much video games. Because like now.
Well, there has to be balance, right? Like when I was a kid, my parents only let us play an hour a day, which seems like a very small amount.
That's like
we lived in the wilds of northern Wisconsin, so they'd kick us outside and we'd roam the forest. It was great. But like but they simultaneously limited how much we could play, but they never once told me or my siblings that video games were a waste of time. They never belittled us for loving video games, but they were always strict about how much we were allowed to play each day, which I always thought was like, seemed to me like the non-parent of the group. That seems like the gold standard of like how to approach it, where it's like parents need to regulate their kids' time, obviously playing games, but you can't belittle something they love. So I appreciated that. And I think that helped me be a healthier gamer now as an adult.
See, my parents in high school learned at a very early age with me that there is no physical anything about this body. Like I am not going to amount to any type of athlete ever. So they treated like my video games like they treated my brother's football. So they let me practice on teams. They would take me to the LAN parties. They would watch us play, like just like they went on Saturdays to watch my brother play football. They would come to MLG events to watch us play. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Super supportive. So yeah, I don't really know where we're going with this. Just, I guess that was our Father's Day
someday. There you go.
Talk,
That's where we'll bring it around. Like
Whatever.
Someday I'll have children, and then I can join this conversation to a deeper level.
Yeah, there you go. We'll bring it back around. We'll bring it back around.
I'll get right on that.
See, now the challenge is my wife, because my wife is also like, well, Tim, you played for like 30 minutes. I'm like, babe, I don't even get the game booted up in 30 minutes. Like, what are you talking about? I got to warm up. Like,
yeah, takes time.
I tried explaining her, like, she might be the mom, but I have the harder job of being a gamer dad. Like, have you ever had a kid and try going pro? No. But,
I'm not gonna touch that one.
that dream is still somewhere in there. But all right, boys, it's been real. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been great.
DoA, great to meet you. Nate, good to catch up. We should catch up sometime again. And I'll talk to you later. Hey, what raid are we running, DoA?
Raid? Oh, tonight? I'm running a Mythic Nyalotha with my guild, the Uwu All Stars.
Taking applicants.
Over on Friends. What?
Taking applicants. I saw that on Twitter.
Yeah, taking applicants. Did you apply?
No.
Oh,
no.
All right. Well,
so here's the thing. I enjoy this friendship.
We only accept real psycho gamers.
The tweet was intimidating to me. So I play WoW and I have a 120 mage horde that we.
What's your eye level?
243.
That sounds impossible. That's impossibly low. It's got to be higher than
that.
No.
I'm recently getting back into WoW. So I
Okay.
don't do like the hardcore. This is why I didn't apply, because I knew I was going to get laughed at. But
no. Get in there. We'll gear you up. You'll be an all-star in no
I'm
time.
what I would like to call an off DPS player.
Oh, okay.
So
Utility DP.
yeah, I'm the
Got it.
I'm the guy who you need me to silence someone, I can silence them.
Throw
I
out
can
the
ice
100
block
traps.
like the best of them. But
Yeah.
we're getting back into the swing of WoW. I'm getting, like everyone, I'm gearing up for the expansion. So
It's a good time. Quarantine's a great time to get back into WoW.
if you want someone, if you need to carry me through some mythics, I can do that for you. All right, boys.
It's just a WoW name.
Yeah, there you go. It's been real. Nate, thanks for the shoes.
Cool.
They're awesome. I'll wear them and
Yeah.
clean them every day. And DoA, good luck tonight.
Thank you.
All right, boys. See ya.
See ya.
Later.
And that will just about do it for episode 252 of The Center Ring, aka TCR, aka your favorite esports podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, did I lie? Did I lie? A bit different than our normal show. But boy, exciting stuff. Thank you again for Nate from ULT for coming on, for DoA for taking the time, and Josh Callis, man, for coming on an esports podcast, professional skateboarder on esports podcast. Some say it would never be done, but we took the challenge. So yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Incredible episode. One that will be hard to top. But appreciate it all the same. Follow us on Twitter at The Center Ring if you're not doing so already. And join up that Discord. If you are on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. We have some fun stuff coming up. And yeah, that's it. So until next time, love you. Talk to you later.